Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to another stellar day here at the South Shore and on Cape Cod. It's been rather rare that I've been able to say such a thing about sunny, stellar days, but we're having several right here in a row, so that's wonderful. Anyhow, this is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, coming to you today, as always, from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger here in Deer Crossing in sunny and pleasant Mashpee, Massachusetts. Well, we're going to start today's broadcast with, as we've already talked about, a look at today's weather. And, of course, I'm looking at the weather page in today's Tuesday edition of the Cape Cod Times for June the 9th. All right, taking a look at today, we're going to get up to a high, and these are generally average highs for our area here, 78 degrees, mostly sunny, breezy in the afternoon and evening. An overnight low tonight of only 61 degrees. That's pretty nice. And a full moon. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to have a high of 75. And I'm looking at Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Mr. Sun appears all 4 days. So tomorrow, 75, breezy and pleasant with partial sunshine, and overnight low, 63 degrees. So our overnight lows are going to be consistently now in the 60s. Looking ahead to Thursday, we have a high of 73 degrees. Again, breezy in the morning, otherwise high clouds and sunshine. Friday, pleasant with times of both sun and clouds, a high of 76, and an overnight low of 64. And going into the weekend, we're back up near 80 again, or probably hit 80 plus in some areas. So Saturday, 79 degrees is a high and an overnight low of 64. Now, of course, we have some humidity coming in on the weekend with some clouds giving way to sun. So today, through all of this entire week, we're looking at appearances of sunshine with partial clouds. So not a bad week at all. And frankly, I think we kind of deserve some good weather after the funky spring we've had so far, because May was nothing to brag about. All right, looking at some highs across the area today, starting on the South Shore in Plymouth, 85 degrees is a high there, 79 in Buzzards Bay, and 84 in Wareham. Okay, we cross the busy bridge into Sandwich, where we have a high of 81 today, 79 in Falmouth. More inland at Mashpee, we have a high of 74, 81 at Barnstable, 78 as a high at Hyannis today, 79 at Dennis. Moving out to the elbow of the Cape, we have a 76-degree high at Chatham, 79 at Brewster, 80 at Eastham, 81 at Truro, and at Race Point in Provincetown, where it's always fun to people watch, we have a high there today of 80 degrees. All right, swimmers, well, I know you're getting antsy. Water temperatures today, Cape Cod Bay, 57 degrees, and in Nantucket Sound, 9 degrees warmer, as it's warming up more quickly than the Sound, of course, 66 degrees as water temperature in the Nantucket Sound today. Going back to Cape Cod Bay, the wave heights are only 1 to 2 feet, wind direction south-southwest, 6 to 12 knots, and again, the water temperature there in the bay is 57 degrees. Back out to Nantucket Sound today, I said the water temperature is 66, wave heights a little higher, 3 to 5 feet, wind direction west-southwest, 12 to 25 knots, so it's a bit breezier out there on the Sound. Taking the ferry from Falmouth, the reliable Island Queen, out to Martha's Vineyard, we find a high there at Oak Bluffs, where you'll land at 74 degrees. Edgartown also at 74, mostly sunny. Taking the fast boat ferry from Hyannis, if you like, out to Nantucket for about an hour's ride, we have 69 at Secaucet and 76 degrees at Nantucket Village. All right, friends, there you have it. I usually tell you what day might be the best to go out and do some errands, but any day this week looks good. Take sunglasses, and if you're down by the beach or your docks or wherever, and you're out in the sun, make sure you put on some of that sunscreen. All right, great weather week ahead for us. At least that's the projection for now. All right, friends, let's now move into page 1 of our Tuesday, June 9th edition of the Cape Cod Times. First, looking for articles of local, regional, or state interest, and then moving on to articles of national interest. Almost the entire front page, I'd say probably 7/8, is covered with 3 different pictures of various graduations. The first being Barnstable High School, where Principal Jason Canetta takes a photo with the graduating seniors ahead of Saturday's ceremony. The graduation was June 6th in Hyannis. The next picture is of Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School, where the proud graduates are tossing their caps at the end of the ceremony, again held on June 6th, high into the air. And finally, the last picture shows graduate Ariana Corso raising her arm as she celebrates after receiving her diploma. All right, there is an article here that's relevant to the Cape, and it says, as a headline, Cape Cod Canal Path to be revealed. The route will provide safe travel around the construction site. This article is written by Susan Times of the Cape Cod Times Network. Here's the article. The State Department of Transportation has created a design for bicycle and pedestrian travel on the Canal Service Road during construction of the new Sagamore Bridge. The department announced in a June 13 press release that its engineering team is working on concepts to provide a safe travel route around the future construction zone. The design concept will be shown at a public hearing on, let's check the date here, July 23rd at Bourne High School. Our priority is to create safe travel routes for everyone during construction of the new Sagamore Bridge, and we've listened to residents, municipal leaders, and elected officials about their desires to create a route for bicyclists and pedestrians around a small portion of the work zone on the Canal Service Road. So said Mass Department of Transportation Undersecretary and Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver. We have considered public input throughout the process of designing the new bridges and are committed to providing safe travel adjacent to the work zones, he said. The current paved Cape Cod Canal Bikeway runs on both sides of the canal with 7 miles of path on the north side and 6.5 miles on the south side. The south side is also the access road for the Army Corps of Engineers between the Sagamore and the Bourne bridges. Work near the Sagamore Bridge began on May 1st with foundation load testing on the south side of the bridge near the former Christmas tree shop. The testing will be done at 4 locations, 2 on either side of the Cape Cod Canal. So work near the Sagamore Bridge began on May 1st with foundation load testing on the south side, as we said before. The testing includes drilling shafts and driving piles into the ground. The work will tell state officials how deep the new Sagamore Bridge foundations must go and what foundations will be best for supporting the traffic. The loud testing activities are intermittent, limited to daytime hours on weekdays, and will last for 2 to 3 months, that according to the Mass Department of Transportation. Other recent progress on the $2.1 billion Sagamore Bridge replacement project has been the design-build procurement process. Mass DOT issued a request for qualifications on May 29th 29th from contractors that have indicated an interest in bidding on the bridge construction. Mass DOT expects to launch the final phase of the procurement in September of this year with the issuance of requests for bid proposals and plans to issue the notice to proceed to a design-build firm in the fall of 2027. The Massachusetts Secretary of Energy and Environment Affairs has already issued a certificate on the final environmental impact report. Mass DOT is awaiting federal decisions on additional environmental reports. All right, there you have it, a brief look at some of the things going on relative to the construction that will be ongoing for quite some time of the new Sagamore Bridge, most specifically announcing a new path around the construction for cyclists and pedestrians. Well, that's a good thing. Moving on to page 2, there are continuations of articles from page 1, of course, but there is one brief article relevant to the Cape. It says, here's a headline, Person Flown to Hospital After Falling Off a Horse. This is by Zane Razak of the Cape Cod Times Network. Here it is. A person was injured after falling off a horse on Saturday afternoon, that according to the Sandwich Fire Department. The incident happened around 3:20 p.m. at an East Sandwich address, according to the fire department. First responders arrived and began treating the person. They decided to have the person flown to a trauma center due to the injuries sustained. A med-flight helicopter was requested, and firefighters brought the person to Sandwich High School, where the med-flight landed to fly them to Rhode Island Hospital for further care and treatment. Now, on to page 3, the Cape and Islands page, where usually we have a couple interesting articles, although half the page, at least, is filled with pictures and advertisements. But that aside, we'll look at the articles. It says here as the first article, Study examines Nauset School consolidation options. This is by Zane Razak, also again of the Cape Cod Times Network. Picture of a school bus underneath the article to take up a little space, and it says under the picture, sanitized school buses parked next to Nauset Regional Middle School await the new semester on December 28th of 2020. Well, that was 6 years ago, folks, but let's take a look at the recent article. Consultants say that consolidating Nauset Regional School District elementary students into 2 regional pre-K through grade 5 schools could save an estimated $9.4 million annually by the years 2035-36, while solving the problems of declining enrollment and what to do with various aging buildings. On June 1st, a public presentation held at Orleans Town Hall dove into a year-long study examining a range of school consolidation scenarios for the school district. The regional study involves Brewster, Eastham, Orleans, and Wellfleet, along with the Nauset Public Schools, and it focuses on 5 elementary schools and Nauset Middle School. The high school is not part of the review. Consulting firms HMFH Architects and Civic Solutions Group were selected in 2025 through a process involving the 4 towns, school committees, town administrators, and the superintendent's office. Since that time, the consultants have toured buildings, reviewed information on enrollment and operations, and set up sessions across the district to meet the public. During the presentation, consultants emphasized that the scenarios are not recommendations, but rather planning tools meant to help with future decisions. This study was commissioned to look at these issues holistically rather than in isolation, said Gail Breer, an Orleans School Committee member and steering committee representative. Enrollment across the elementary and middle school levels has dropped 12% over the last 5 years, that according to the presentation. Meanwhile, Projected operating costs are on the rise. All 6 school buildings have aging systems and problems with code compliance, with facilities constructed between 1938 and 1996. Under the existing school model, projected operating costs could reach $41.6 million by the fiscal year 2036, that according again to the study. The greatest projected potentially savings, came from a scenario that would consolidate elementary students into 2 regional pre-kindergarten through grade 5 schools, reducing projected annual operating costs to $32.2 million. That scenario would also have the lowest projected facility cost range between $182 million and $202 million, compared with $255 million under the current model. Other scenarios analyzed include maintaining the current structure, consolidating Brewster's Stony Brook and Eddy elementary schools into 1 pre-K through 5 school, creating 3 regional PK as pre-kindergarten through 5 schools, and creating 2 regional PK through 2 schools with 1 regional grade 3 to 5 school. I know that's a little confusing, but there you have it. Consultants said the savings would largely stem from better use of space and staffing. Justin Tyak of Civic Solutions Group said classrooms cost the same to heat and cool whether they hold 5 students or 18 students. The study also compared building utilization rates against Massachusetts School Building Authority benchmarks and found wide variation among the schools, with Wellfleet Elementary School showing the lowest rate. Nauset Regional School, the middle school, that is, would remain a grade 6 to 8 school at its current spot in all scenarios presented. A preliminary $50 million baseline repair cost for the middle school was included in the facility estimates. All scenarios included significant facility investments, including construction of new schools or major renovations to existing schools. Officials questioned during the discussion whether more attention should be given to the middle school in future planning. Consultants said the middle school's overall utilization figure is affected by shared spaces such as its auditorium, gymnasiums, and cafeteria, while classroom use is closer to 78%. The report also found areas for opportunity whether schools are consolidated, including expanded public pre-kindergarten, stronger curriculum coordination, more consistent world language programs, and better after-school access. Tyak said the district's kindergartens absorb about 69% of area students, meaning roughly 31% of kindergarten children attend private schools, homeschool, or pursue other options. He said pre-kindergarten and after-school access could help more families choose Nauset schools. Kevin Galligan, an Orleans Select Board member and steering committee representative, said the numbers show the region will need to act, though no decision is imminent. There's a lot of not ready for prime time because more work is needed, Galligan said. The project was funded through a $150,000 state efficiency and regionalization grant and $200,000 that 4 towns collectively contributed. All right, so what's next? Well, consultants said any consolidation or regionalization effort for these schools would likely not start until the year 2028. Potential completion ranges from 2032 to 2035, depending on availability of state funding. Over the next 6 months, the steering committee plans to collect public feedback, continue meeting and speaking with the Massachusetts Schools Building Authority about possible funding and project timelines. Over the next 6 to 12 months, officials expect to determine which capital, operating, or governance changes should be pursued for further study. Public comments on the study are being accepted through June 30th. All right, there you have it, a look at the potential options for consolidation of pre-K and elementary schools in the Nauset area. All right, we're going to move on now, friends. Here's another brief article on the page 3, Cape and Islands page. It says 5-Star Weekend premieres July the 9th. This is by Gwen Friss, new editor or author by the Cape Cod Times USA Today Network. Here's the article. Peacock and author Elin Hilderbrand are spilling the tea. The 5-Star Weekend, starring Jennifer Garner as Nantucket food blogger Hollis Shaw, is ready. The series, based on Hildebrand's book of the same name, will premiere July 9th exclusively on the streaming service, with all 8 episodes available at once. Peacock released the official trailer on YouTube. Then on July 14th and July 16th, Dreamland Film and Performing Arts Theater on Nantucket will show the first episode, followed by a talkback with Hildebrand and Tim Ehrenberg, a podcaster and president of the Nantucket Book Festival. A private wine reception follows upstairs in the Harborview Room, catered by Lemon Press, a woman-owned and Persian-inspired business on the island. Hildebrand is a #1 New York Times best-selling author of 32 novels, with most based on Nantucket, where she's lived for decades. Hildebrand is sometimes called the Queen of the Beach Reads. Her fans have turned out in droves on September 22nd of last year, when actors Jennifer Garner, Regina Hall, Chloe Sevigny, Gemma Chan, and Darcy Carden were filming the episodes. The 5-Star Weekend on Nantucket's Main Street. The series also stars Harlow Jane and Timothy Oliphant. According to the Peacock website, the 5-Star Weekend is about Hollis Shaw, a famed cook and best-selling author who suffers a devastating loss. In an effort to overcome grief and herself again, Hollis gets the idea to host a weekend away at her house in Nantucket with 3 friends from different stages of her life: her childhood, her 20s, 30s, and one surprise 5th star. Boundaries are pushed and secrets are exposed. All right, there you have it. 5-Star Weekend premiering July 9th in Nantucket. Sounds like a fun-filled opportunity. All right, we're moving on now, friends. Here's an article about upcoming weather. It says, forecasters, they say brace for coast-to-coast heat wave. This is a USA Today article. Summer heat is on the way from coast to coast, so say forecasters, with high temperatures well into the 80s and 90s, and even into the 100s in some areas. In fact, the National Temperature Outlook map for June 11th through the 17th shows that above normal temperatures are forecast for the entire lower 48 states. Combined with the June climatology and high sun angle, many areas are likely to see these warmer than average temperatures during the middle part of June. Thomas Kahlo, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service's Extended Prediction Division, said in a June 5th email to the USA Today newspaper. Greater than half of the lower 48 states are experiencing moderate drought conditions, helping to further increase temperatures over drier regions. The heat wave will be the result of a strong ridge of high pressure that's expected to set up over much of the country, according to the Federal Climate Prediction Center. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration said a ridge is a zone of higher atmospheric pressure where air sinks and warms, usually bringing clear, dry, and often hotter weather to the area. Typically a summertime occurrence, ridges are responsible for major heat waves, NOAA said. Any precipitation is usually shunted around the periphery of the high-pressure area. High pressure aloft causes the air to sink. This downward motion compresses and warms the air, and in lower atmosphere, while simultaneously trapping heat rising from the Earth's surface, leading to heat waves. The skies are also usually clear due to this downward motion of air. NOAA's Weather Prediction Center said the building ridge will promote above-average temperatures along the east coast. Warm nighttime temperatures could cause problems for those susceptible to extreme heat. Warm, low temperatures over much of the mid-Atlantic could lead to moderate to major heat risk impacts for those without adequate cooling and hydration, the center said. Kahlo said a transient period of relatively cooler weather is possible across the western U.S. as a front moves across the region, with this system possibly providing some relief from the heat to the central U.S. by the end of the week. However, he said that temperatures are forecast to quickly rebound across the western United States, with significant warming across the Pacific Northwest, California, and into southwestern states. The longest duration of warmth is predicted to be across the western U.S., where the ridge of pressure is forecast to become dominant in late June. So, heat and safety tips. Use sunblock or sunscreen and reapply it regularly, like every 2 hours is a good baseline. Dress for the heat. Pick loose-fitting, light-colored, and lightweight clothes, the National Weather Service recommends, as dark-colored clothes absorb heat. Don't leave kids or pets in the car. The temperature quickly becomes deadly, even if it's not hot out. So just a few tips to beware of in heated weather. Well, friends, at this point, we're pretty much looking at the possibility of reading various articles that are more of a national interest. This one included, it says as a headline, SBC will again debate female pastors. Theologian proposes ban in the group's constitution. This is a USA Today article. There is a picture underneath the headline here of some protesters. It says, Heather Deal Left and Nikki Hardeman of Baptist Women's in Ministry demonstrate outside the Southern Baptist Convention's annual meeting in Indianapolis on June 11th, 2 years ago in 2024. The debate over female pastors continues to challenge the Nashville-based denomination's dedication to church self-governance. Well, let's see what the article said. It begins with this question: should Southern Baptist women be allowed to preach to their congregations or teach Scripture? Well, the issue's been a perennial hot-button issue for the Southern Baptist Convention, whose delegates are once again confronting that matter at the group's annual meeting June 9th and 10th in Orlando, Florida. The question won't linger much longer if one prominent Southern Baptist theologian has his way, and his answer is a resounding no to the women. On May 18th, Albert Mohler, the longtime president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, announced online that he intended to propose a constitutional amendment at the event explicitly banning churches from allowing women to serve in primary leadership roles in the nation's largest Protestant denomination. It is for the cause of our unity in the truth that I intend to bring a motion to the Southern Baptist Convention in Orlando to amend the Constitution, the influential evangelical wrote in a statement that has prompted a torrent of discussion online. Let's get this done. Delegates, or messengers as they are known, narrowly rejected a constitutional statement at the 2025 gathering in Dallas that would have similarly prohibited female pastors, with proponents failing to gain ground on a contentious issue rooted in differing biblical interpretations. As a result, the debate continues to challenge the Nashville-based denomination's dedication to church self-governance. The controversy has triggered the departure of multiple congregations from the convention, one of the most influential religious groups in the United States, as some congregations espouse more egalitarian views on women in ministry rather than complementarianism, which assigns varied but hierarchical roles for men and women. The faith statement of the SBC states, while both men and women are gifted for service in the church, the office of pastor, elder, overseer is limited to men as qualified by Scripture. During the 2025 meeting, the SBC has severed relationships with several churches with female pastors. Fountain of Praise Church in Houston, the Crossing Church in Tampa, Florida, and the Zion Temple Baptist Church in O'Fallon, Illinois. None responded to requests for comment from USA Today. In recent years, the SBC similarly cut ties with other notable churches, including Saddleback Church, the megachurch founded by Rick and Kay Warren in Southern California, Fern Creek Baptist of Louisville, First Baptist Church of Alexandria in Virginia, and others have left voluntarily. The issue risked the loss of more congregations from the denomination, which is among those that have battled declining membership. According to Lifeway Research, the SBC's research firm, total membership dropped for the 19th consecutive year, falling 3% to 12.3 million, even as attendance at worship services, Bible study sessions, and Sunday school classes remained on the upswing. The faith group meets yearly to elect new leadership and discuss both business and changes that could chart the denomination's future course. About 20,000 people are expected to take part in this year's gathering. While the issue of female pastors was already among numerous non-binding resolutions set to be discussed in Orlando, a constitutional amendment would set the denomination's policy in stone. In announcing his Truth and Unity Amendment, Mohler said the need for a constitutional amendment is abundantly clear and has been building over recent years. He compared the moment to the faith body's handling of LGBTQ plus issues in the 90s, when the SBC made clear that our cooperation is not extended to those who would endorse or affirm LGBTQ lifestyles and activities. One of the greatest testimonies to that forceful language, he said, is that LGBTQ plus issues are not an issue of open debate at the SBC year by year, and it hasn't been for the generation. That's exactly what we need on the issue of the office of pastor. He said the question was one on which Southern Baptists stand together. But with 61% of SBC delegates voting for last year's proposed ban for a second consecutive year, it fell short of the necessary two-thirds majority to pass. Mohler's announcement has drawn blowback from those who say women shouldn't be prohibited from exercising their pastoral gifts, as well as others who call repeated procedural battles over the issue counterproductive. Opposition has also come from former SBC member Beth Moore, founder of Houston's Living Proof Ministries, and an advocate for sexual abuse victims. Moore, a popular Bible teacher who garnered backlash for criticizing President Trump's treatment of women, publicly left the SBC in 2021. It became disturbingly clear to me that the SBC as an entity was more interested in protecting shepherds rather than the sheep entrusted to their care, she wrote on June 1st on X. In 2018, a high-profile scandal prompted reflection within the denomination over its treatment of women, SBC leaders began to signal increasing support for women in convention leadership roles. Some floated Moore as a possible candidate for SBC president. The next year, a handful of Southern Baptist women became the first ever to win high-level roles with the convention or its affiliated agencies, breaking a decades-long run of men holding only those positions. It was a breath of fresh air, recalled Kathy Litton, who was narrowly elected as the convention's registration secretary. The women's rising profile, however, stirred some discomfort. Moeller, while expressing support for women, wrote a column backing traditional gender norms. The fallout and its accompanying rhetoric would ultimately prompt women like Moore to leave the denomination. It's clear the convention needs to settle its mind on this issue, Moeller said in an interview with the Louisville-based Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood at its May 20th broadcast. Well, won't that be interesting to see if women in the SBC church denomination will be allowed to be ministers? Well, one can only hope, I guess, that it will be an interesting debate with a logical outcome. Time will tell. Well, friends, we're a little past the halfway point of today's broadcast, and typically we take a look at the obituaries for today, but there are none in the paper today. I would imagine that might be in part not to the fact that people are not daily dying, but rather the high cost of placing an obituary in a newspaper. Oh, well, let's move on. Here's an article, sports related, but it has general relations as well, relative to Coach Mike Vrabel of the Patriots. And this is under the commentary section of the newspaper, and the headline here says, Vrabel is still weighed down by the photo scandal. It's a USA Today article. Being from New England and Patriots fans, I'm sure you're interested in this article, at least I think you would be, but here it is. The word that will continue to follow Mike Vrabel is one of his own choosing, that being the word laughable. It's a word he relayed via a statement in the immediate aftermath of the controversial photos of himself and former NFL reporter Dianna Russini becoming public this past April. Now, nearly 2 months later, Vrabel, the head coach of the New England Patriots, fresh off a Super Bowl appearance, continues to frame the story that, according to Molly McPherson, a crisis communications and strategy expert with more than 25 years of experience. And she's a Patriots fan as well. Vrabel is running, in my opinion, a staged rehabilitation, albeit somewhat clumsily, McPherson told USA Today Sports. Everything he's doing is sequenced to move from that initial denial at the beginning to where we are now. After the New York Post published photos on April 7th of Vrabel and Russini holding hands and hugging at a private Arizona resort in Sedona prior to the annual league meetings in March, both Vrabel and Russini, who are married to other people and have 2 children each, vehemently denied any nefarious insinuation. These photos show a completely innocent interaction, and any suggestion otherwise is laughable, Vrabel told the Post at that time. This doesn't deserve any further response. But their excuses of being on separate trips that happen to be at the same place with other groups or people never really quite panned out. The New York Post released even more photos of the two on April 23rd, which appeared to have been dated from March of 2020. Additional photos from a boat trip in Tennessee to time together in a Las Vegas casino have also surfaced of the two together. The controversy covers a sprawling set of issues: personal conduct, organizational ethics, and media trust. At this point, McPherson said achieving full accountability would require sitting down with a news outlet and a reporter and laying out the truth, because he still hasn't taken accountability, McPherson said, so people are still going to look for it. So has Vrabel been accountable in the Rossini saga? What McPherson has noted during Vrabel's attempts to explain himself in a trio of meetings with the media after the photos were first published is that he spoke without acknowledging exactly what did happen during his interactions with Rossini. I've had some difficult conversations with people I care about, with my family, the organization, the coaches, the players, Vrabel said on April 21st, 2 weeks after the New York Post first published the photos. Those have been positive and productive. We believe in order to be successful on and off the field, you have to make good decisions. That includes me. That starts with me. We never want our actions to negatively affect the team. You never want to be the cause of a distraction. What I can promise you is that my family, this organization, the team, the staff, the coaches, everybody, our fans most importantly, will get the best version of me going forward. That statement and his comments in subsequent meetings with the media, McPherson said he has come up short in assuming full accountability. Vrabel's decision to step away from the draft. Vrabel spent the final day of the 2026 NFL Draft away from the team and said he had to prioritize his family, a move that restored credibility to the 2025 Coach of the Year, according to St. Mary's, Canada University, psychology professor Dr. Marianne Fisher. Fisher, who specializes in evolutionary foundations of human interpersonal relationships, viewed Vrabel's response from the Patriots fan point of view, despite having never heard of Mike Vrabel until recently. She said she would feel better about putting her faith in someone to lead an organization she is passionate about if the person had the maturity to acknowledge they weren't at peak performance and step away, even during Day 3 of the NFL Draft. An important day, of course, on the NFL calendar, but something the Patriots could handle quite well without his presence. So Vrabel's accountability to his family looks different than public. With Vrabel saying that he was beginning to seek counseling, Dr. Sheila Addison, a licensed family and marriage therapist, recommended that he attend individual psychotherapy to understand the behaviors that led him to this point. What a person does with their time in the immediate aftermath of a crisis can heavily influence a partner and children's experiences, and that presence is incredibly important, if at all possible, Addison told USA Today Sports. When there's a major crisis in a family, and this certainly is a crisis, working parents often faces hard choices about whether to prioritize the family or the work, Addison said. I think it shows a lot of dignity and character and seriousness to be willing to say that you're stabilizing your family and attending to their needs is your priority. Addison is trained in the Gottman method, which is an approach to working with couples who have experienced infidelity and follows the mantra alone, attune, attach. Part of that is getting your questions answered, like, what really happened, Addison said. So the Vrabel scandal is the latest in the Patriots' history. The Patriots can pretend to be above being branded publicly as cheaters. Deflategate, Spygate, and other controversies marked their dynastic run, dating to turn of the century. But they've ultimately shown that they do care at certain times, according to McPherson, such as when votes are cast for Hall of Fame, which have kept Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick on the outside looking in. When Vrabel revealed to ESPN that he would miss the final day of the draft, the Patriots said they fully supported Vrabel's decision. Mike has been open with us about his commitment to being the best version of himself for his family, this team, and our fans, and we respect the steps he's taking to follow through on that commitment, the team said in a statement this past April 23rd. Looking at Vrabel's response, parts, that is, admitting during the first press conference that he's had difficult conversations with the team and the people he cares about, being upfront about missing the draft to spend time with his family, and sharing his decision to seek counseling, have been reasonable, McPherson said, but the sum is a disaster. She said, it's a classic crisis containment strategy that keeps unfolding. The positioning the position himself away from his first move of dismissal and contempt from the idea this is laughable. Until that changes, people won't move on. He cannot get from A to Z without taking accountability, McPherson said. This will continue to follow him. Well, there you have it, friends, a couple perspectives from counselors and therapists on the Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini situation. But like most people, I'm sure you've heard enough of all this, and as I have hit as well, we are ready to move on. Not only from this situation, but to the next article. All right, friends, at this point, let's take a look at the most recent lottery results, starting first with the two big ones, the Mega Millions and the Powerball. Nobody's won recently in either drawing, as the Mega Millions jackpot is currently at $392 million. The next drawing will be held today at 11 p.m. this evening. The most recent winning numbers for Mega Millions drawn this past Friday were these: 13, 30, 50, 52, 66, with a mega ball of 2. Again, 13, 30, 50, 52, 66, a mega ball of 2. In the Powerball, a jackpot now exists of $238 million. If you take the cash option, you'd have approximately $106 million. Wouldn't it be nice to just imagine what you could do with that kind of money? Oh, well, the most recent drawn winning numbers, which happened yesterday, the 8th of June, were these: 3, 24, 34, 43, 49, and a Powerball of 20. 3, 24, 34, 43, 49, Powerball of 20. All right, looking at the Millionaire for Life drawing, the next drawing will be today at 11:15 tonight. $1 million a year for life is the grand prize here. The most winning recent numbers were these, drawn yesterday, the 8th of June: 20, 25, 40, 50, 55, and 1. 20, 25, 40, 50, 55, and 1. For that 1 is the Millionaire for Life ball. That's the Millionaire for Life drawing. Megabucks, $20.25 million. In the jackpot, here are the winning numbers from yesterday: 15, 18, 19, 20, 36, and 42. 15, 18, 19, 20, 36, 42. All right, taking a look at mass cash, $100,000 estimated top prize. The midday drawing for yesterday's mass cash numbers were these: 2, 7, 27, 32, 35. That's the midday mass cash, 2, 7, 27, 32, 35. The mass cash evening drawing from yesterday's winning numbers were these: 20, 24, 25, 27, and 30. 20, 24, 25, 27, and 30. And finally, the numbers game. The midday drawing held yesterday, the 6th, for the numbers game. Here are those winning numbers: 4167. 4167 for the midday numbers, and the evening numbers from yesterday: 5845. 5845. Evening numbers drawing. All right, friends, you can't win if you don't play. And for those of you who do play, I say to you, as I always do, good luck, players. Well, friends, have you heard about the latest news of the so-called screw worm? Well, if you haven't, this next article will focus on that, and it specifically references the state of Texas, but it has implications for all of us. The headline here says, livelihoods on the line in Texas. Ranchers question the United States Department of Agriculture response as the screw worm has returned. Underneath that headline, there's a picture of cattle ranchers having attended a presentation on the threat of the screwworm during the Fayette County Cow-Calf Clinic and Trade Show in LaGrange, Texas, recently. This article has a dateline of Cotulla, C-O-T-U-L-L-A, Cotulla, Texas, and here is the article. Like many ranchers in South Texas, Susan Story said nightmarish screwworm outbreaks were among her first childhood memories. Now, at age 62, she still recalls seeing wriggling maggots as they burrowed into living livestock and smelling the burning carcasses of calves that were too far gone for her family to treat. The U.S. Department of Agriculture this week confirmed 2 infestations of New World screwworm in Texas, the state's first cases since the 1970s. 3 additional cases of New World screwworm were reported on June 8th, raising the total number of cases to 5 since the first domestic screwworm infestation in 6 decades was found in a Texas calf last week. However, local residents and ranchers remain split over whether to trust the agency's response, with some saying it's too slow or not far-reaching enough. The U.S. cattle ranchers have been bracing for a domestic screwworm case for over a year as the pest has advanced north through Mexico, with experts predicting that a widespread outbreak could cost the state $1.8 billion in economic damage and could be devastating for the state's wildlife. For Story and other ranchers who lived through the last outbreak, the news has further eroded their trust in the USDA and has prompted them to search for their own solutions. We're fighting for this so our grandchildren can keep what we have, she said, as her pickup truck bumped down a dirt road past grazing cattle, sprawling green pastures, and migrating butterflies. I don't want my herd threatened. Screwworms are parasitic flies whose females lay eggs in wounds on any warm-blooded animal. Once the eggs hatch, hundreds of larvae use their sharp mouths to eat through surviving living flesh, eventually killing their host if left untreated. They mostly spread through the movement of infested animals and pose no threat to food safety and rarely affect humans, experts have said. The last time the screwworm was endemic in the United States, it took the cattle industry 30 years to recover, that according to Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins. The USDA and Texas officials created a quarantine zone and stepped up trapping and surveillance efforts, deployed response teams, and continued releasing sterile flies, with Rollins saying the agency expects to contain the Texas cases and prevent the pest from becoming established in the United States. Well before the first U.S. detection of New World screwworm since February of 2025, USDA has worked around the clock with our state, local, industry, and ranchers on the ground. The secretary herself made 4 trips to South Texas, more than anywhere else in the country, a USDA spokesperson told Reuters news agency. The idea that this department has not been transparent is absurd and does not match what ranchers are telling the department and our partners directly. Reuters reported last year that hundreds of veterinarians, support staff, and lab workers at the animal health arm of the USDA had left after the Trump administration pushed for resignations, leaving fewer specialists to respond to animal disease outbreaks and adding to concerns about preparedness. On June 5th, about 100 ranchers in mud-splattered boots and cowboy hats packed a small high school cafeteria for a Texas Animal Health Commission briefing on the screwworm situation, peppering officials with questions and venting frustrations over what they saw as a very slow federal response. As Texans, we're not afraid to take this on, said John Paul Schuster, a 35-year-old rancher and judge. Some ranchers have proposed raising money to build a privately funded sterile fly production plant at a startup cost of roughly $4 million. Screwworms were originally eradicated from the United States when researchers began releasing massive numbers of sterilized male screwworms, flies that mate with wild female screwworms to produce infertile eggs. Currently, sterile fly production is far short of what is needed to suppress the outbreak, though 2 new plants are under construction. After the meeting, Schuster lambasted what he saw as the slow pace of sterile fly plant production, saying a wider infestation could endanger the ranching and hunting industries crucial to the economy for Kinney County's 3,000 residents. If it's not controlled in 2 years and eradicated in 5 years, my little county will be done, Schuster said. Though the USDA has detailed its strategy for containing screwworm, some ranchers have bristled at what they view as a lack of transparency, including the agency's decision not to disclose exact coordinates where sterile flies are being released. We need to know what's being done because it's our financial investment. It's our livelihood that's on the line, Story said. They're not betting their herd, they're betting ours. Other ranchers dismissed the USDA's recommendations, including daily inspections and preventative treatments, as impractical for operations that span thousands of acres, face severe labor shortages, and lack skilled cowboys. It's not really feasible alone. There's no more cowboys anymore, and there's no good ranch horses, said DJ Rubio, a 62-year-old rancher and Story's husband. Monty Martin, a 61-year-old rancher who lives close to both positive screwworm cases in Zavala County, Texas, took a more measured tone. People need to stop politicizing this. Stop finger-pointing. It doesn't do anyone any good, he said. Those people that are on the front lines have been tremendous, and I have the utmost respect and admiration for them. Every major road leading to the roughly 12-mile-wide infested zone around the initial detection site is marked with blinking orange signs urging vehicles carrying livestock to pull into a checkpoint staffed with state personnel charged with inspecting animals for screwworm, though they were gone by the early evening. The responsibility of spotting new screwworm, that's hard to say, folks, screwworm, over and over. Infestations, however, falls largely on ranchers themselves. Anthony Gallegos, a 43-year-old rancher in Zavala County, said the outbreak has made him even more vigilant about monitoring his cattle. "Come on, girls," he yelled, waving a bucket of treats as a herd of Black Angus cattle trotted toward him. "They just pretty much run to me like their dads here." Gallegos said the relationship he has with his cattle and the relatively small herd allows him to keep a close eye on them for worrying symptoms and vaccinate them with preventive medications like the USDA recommends. Even with preventative measures, however, Gallegos worries about what would happen if screwworm became widespread. "If it is widespread and it starts infecting other animals, it's going to hurt our bottom line," he said. "Every time I see a buzzard, my heart sinks." All right, there you have it. The concern about the New World screwworm infecting animals in various counties in Texas and the devastating effect that could have if it spreads. Well, if you're interested in NBA basketball, you know that last night the San Antonio Spurs came to New York's Madison Square Garden and defeated the Knicks, and now that series is at 2 wins for the Knicks and 1 for the Spurs in the best-of-7 series. Well, a quick look at the baseball standings as we near the end of today's broadcast. In the American League East Division of Major League Baseball, Tampa Bay and the New York Yankees are basically tied for first place, with Toronto being in third, and your beloved Boston Red Sox continuing to put themselves out of the race with a record of 27-37, 11 1/2 games behind the division leader. In the Central Division, the Cleveland Guardians lead the Chicago White Sox by a game and a half, and in the West Division of the American League, Seattle leads Texas by 2 games. In the National League, the division leaders are Atlanta in the East, Milwaukee in the Central, and, of course, the Dodgers in the West, who've now taken a 7.5 game lead over Arizona and the San Diego Padres. All right, friends, that quick look at sports brings us to the conclusion of today's broadcast. This has been Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, coming to you from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger here in Mashpee, Massachusetts. Been my privilege and pleasure to read for you today, and I look forward to doing the same for next Tuesday. Until then, friends, stay happy, stay healthy, and so long for now.